What's going on, folks? Today's review is going to be a very special one. It is my honor to be reviewing an album by a unique artist that I have the pleasure of knowing personally. Shout out to Totto and everyone in his Hub Discord server. I'll make sure to leave a link to the server in the description below for anyone who's interested. A man of many talents, Totto is an up-and-coming electronic musician from Dallas, Texas. He's an artist in every sense of the word because he's a producer, songwriter, graphic designer / visual artist, and DJ. He produces all his own music and creates all of his own artwork and animations as well. By day, he's a music and art teacher, and he shares my disdain for the music industry. Shout out to all my fellow independent artists out there. Totto first hit my radar back in 2018. Fellow bass-heavy electronic music producer 1788L released an EP that year entitled Sentience. Totto was featured on the opening track of the project entitled Full Burst. The EP was a bite-sized package of bombastic and sleek electronica draped in synthwave aesthetics. The track Full Burst stuck out to me due to its heavy synthwave aesthetic and wild production. I loved what I heard, and I knew I had to look further into Totto's own discography. What I found was a breath of fresh air. Totto's sound is distinct, and I don't think his work is comparable to anything else I've heard before. And that's what captivated me, his ability to deliver a unique sound that draws inspiration from genres such as classic dubstep, like purple music if you're familiar, synthwave, hybrid trap, and house. And from what I can gather, he's been active since the mid-2010s, with his earliest releases under the name Totto dating back to 2017. Since then, he's released several singles and EPs, which have served as a strong introduction to the unique world he has created through his art. A year ago, in February 2022, Totto went on to independently release his debut LP, Environment Music Volume 1. The album was a sleek presentation of his refined sound, as Totto was able to showcase his promising production ability. The album offers a diverse experience. It's a real treat for EDM fans that are hungry for something new, something different. And now, Totto makes his return with a direct sequel, a strong follow-up, which further develops his sound. Environment Music Volume 2 is a total of 11 tracks, about 45 minutes in length. There's not much lyrical content to discuss here, so I'll be covering my thoughts, observations, and highlights on the album track by track. Track 1 is entitled Merging Process. The album opener is a sleek introduction to the style, color palette, and taste of the music we're going to hear throughout the project. The track itself is a wonderful journey in which Totto is able to flex his ability as a songwriter, composer, and producer. The intro kicks us off with serene synth melodies of various colors, which carry the listener into the build-up. There, the sound shifts as low bass rumbles, fluttering metallic samples, risers, and a kick drum hype up the energy. The first drop hits us with sleek dubstep, which sounds like something out of Blade Runner. The percussion features steady, thick kicks and metallic snares. As for the accompaniment, it's packed with swelling bass rumbles, sleek melodic saw chops, and synths in the background which sound like machinery of the future. After the dubstep drop continues for a bit, the beat switches as we shift into a new groove. The percussion moves away from the halftime groove, instead picking up the pace. A subtle vocal sample sneaks into the mix as well. The following section is a breakdown of sorts, and it's my favorite part. A new melody enters the mix, reminiscent of my own electro roots. It's a driving melody with syncopated motion, which suits the mix well. The drums revert back to the halftime steady groove as bright synths illuminate the background. The song calms down after this as we enter a melodic bridge. The drums fade out and we're carried forward by a new melody and pulsating synth chords. A brief build-up leads into the final drop. The bright synths return in full force, and a smooth new melody joins the illuminated sound. It feels like the established sound has come to its most conclusive and highest point there, and the song ends shortly after this drop. Track 2 is entitled Installing New Ego featuring Andre. The album proceeds to shift into an intriguing direction. This ambient track is a marvelous highlight as it paints a somber and lonely scene with its assortment of colors. The tone is reminiscent of work by Vangelis R.I.P., with its visceral synthwave blues-inspired sound. We kick off with the sound of synth drones in the distance, and I love the usage of reverb. It helps the mix feel massive. And the sense of depth is amplified beautifully once the synth chords grow larger in presence and the rumbling bass makes its appearance. The main synth that catches my attention sounds like a digital didgeridoo. It's an incredible sound and it sounds mesmerizing in the mix. From here on out, the mix swells and shrinks beautifully as the color palette continues to shift as we move from one section to the next. My words simply can't do it justice. The track is as ominous as it is gorgeous. A haunting array of synthesizers all coming together to push the album into a harrowing direction before getting back to the bangers. Track 3 is entitled Elevator to the Surface. The album picks up the pace with this lively electro house tune. I enjoy the four-on-the-floor approach to the percussion. I can hear a blend of dry kicks, snares, rich hi-hats, and syncopated toms which accentuate varying rhythms. I love the sound of the samples chosen here. It creates a cohesive drum groove which works very well together. The background accompaniment creates a strong droning energy for the song, and notable elements include the crunchy syncopated bass melody in the foreground and the blend of synth drones and shifting samples in the background. The song is a non-stop groove which helps keep the music pumping forward. Track 4 is entitled The Bomblands. This song seems to pick up where the last one left off. It feels like an expansion of the previously established groove. The crispy four-on-the-floor percussion continues to propel the listener forward. Notable additions to the mix include vocal samples, variations in the bass line, and chirping synths. I love the various flavors of timbres we can hear in the mix. I think my favorite two remind me of Star Wars. One timbre sounds like R2-D2, and the other features subtle sliding throughout its sound. It sounds like it's ripped straight out of Star Wars Battlefront 2, 2005. And it's possible that the comparison is too niche, but the real ones will understand what I'm talking about. It's a specific sound that you'd hear mid-match in the middle of a game. It's very wispy in its taste. And most of the song centers around the groove and the feel of the music as we shift from one section to the next in a seamless manner. If you're listening passively, the whole song will pass you by in the blink of an eye. But stop and listen actively, I'm sure you'll understand the magic that's at work here. This track is a danceable cut and a natural progression from the previous track. And track 5 is entitled Swunk Apostle. The album shifts gears with this tune as we enter a glitch-hop banger. At the beginning, we're met with the nocturnal sounds of crickets, low synth bass rumbles, and soon the percussion enters the mix to get things moving along. The drums feature fat syncopated kicks, crispy snares, and stuttering hi-hats. The first major section has an interesting accompaniment consisting of sustained fried bass tones, blippy synth counter melodies, and a smooth saw melody. My favorite element is the spooky sounding melodies that sit way above the mix. They're wispy and ghostly in their movement. After this section ends, we enter a build-up and a verse of sorts, which introduce new elements. For example, I love the xylophone melody. It's jovial in its movement and tonality. In the background, we can also hear the addition of syncopated plucked synth chords. The instrumental gradually transitions into a build-up. The next major section that follows is a beat drop, and the accompaniment shifts in a new direction. The introduction of a squelchy bass tone helps the mix feel heavier. There's also subtle bass growls which accentuate the distinct sound. The beat switches for the drop, a metallic snare drum and stuttering kicks bring up the energy levels. And after the drop wraps up, we're hit with one more instrumental verse section and the song fades out. Track 6 is entitled Laser Town. This track is a chunky dubstep tune. It seems to pick up where the last song left off, as it shares similar palette of sounds and samples. The verses feature bright syncopated saw stabs, blippy flute-like counter melody, various fluttering synths, and minimal bass growls. I love the acid melody which appears in the transitions between sections. It's very tasty. And the drops are all different, so the track as a whole pops more because of that. The first drop hits us with a subdued sound as the main focus is on the chunky basses and chirping synths. I love how the groove feels like a big elephant trotting forward as the drums keep the music steady. The second part of this drop shifts as the bass rumbles are deeper and there's the introduction of saw counter melodies in the background. I love how fluidly the music shifts from one section to the next. And it continues to shift as the following section hits us with an upbeat drum groove. Soft kicks and offbeat hats carry the listener forward in what is essentially a build-up. The droning synth chords, fluttering synth tones, chirping sounds, and sleek risers all raise the energy before releasing the listener into the next drop. And if the first drop felt subdued, this drop takes a step in a similar direction. The focus here is on the thick syncopated bass groove. The drop goes on to shift through different timbres for the main groove, which helps the drop stand out. Some of the grooves are squelching, while others feel plucked or struck as if a giant xylophone were grooving on the beat. The background accompaniment is similar to that of the first drop, simple enough so that the focus isn't drawn away from the wonderful chunky synth tones at the foreground. There is the addition of offbeat saw stabs which help accentuate the new grooves. I love the variety of flavors presented throughout the second drop. It makes for an engaging and captivating experience. Track 7 is entitled Chungo's Return. This track is a huge personal highlight. It's an immersive and wonderful experience. I think it highlights everything I love about electronic music. Totto is able to tap into beautiful melodies, tonality, and sound design to present the listener with a rich and diverse song. The intro gets us started with the sounds of lonely synth tones and the melodic piano chords. I love the sound, it's quite beautiful. The subsequent build-up introduces more synth elements, eventually introducing the lively and captivating main synth melody. Risers and drums sneak into the mix, raising the energy in a smooth manner. The drop switches up the energy with its distinct array of sounds. The percussion highlights a strong dubstep groove with its clean snares and chunky kicks. There's two main tones which catch my attention here. The first is the chunky syncopated bass groove. The second is the polar opposite, a pleasant plucked sort of melody. Totto is able to bounce between each of these sounds in a cohesive manner, which creates a fluid drop section. And the post-drop section allows the music to breathe beautifully. As the drums fade out, a gradual decrescendo happens in the mix, and it feels like the listener is floating along the interwebs. Sleek and wispy synth tones carry the listener forward, eventually leading into a breakcore section, which is immaculate. The crunchy synth lead that makes an appearance in this section steals the show for me, as glitching tones repeat in the background. The drum breaks are the right size for the mix, not too big and not too small. After this break section ends, we're led to an upbeat, subdued 4-on-the-floor groove. The mix shrinks and then swells after this point. The beat switch is done well, as a new sleek synth melody enters the mix and captures the listener's attention. And eventually the main synth melody returns and helps the song feel more engaging. This section goes on to blend seamlessly into the second drop. And the drop features breakbeats sprinkled into the upbeat drum groove, and the synths are very similar to the sound of the first drop. The section grooves beautifully and the song ends as soon as the drop closes out. Track 8 is entitled Second Phase of the Chungo Battle. The song kicks off with an upbeat 4-on-the-floor groove, with synth stabs and glitchy tones repeating in the background. The groovy and tight bass line is a lot of fun, as it glides on the instrumental and progressively changes in tone as it plays. The shifting color of the bass line steals the show for me at this part of the song, as it makes for an engaging sense of progression. Sometimes it's square-like, sometimes it sounds like an acid synth. And around the halfway mark, the main drums fade out, and we enter my favorite section of the song. The remaining percussion feels chopped here, not as consistent. This allows for the listener's focus to shift towards the new synth tone entering the mix. It sneaks in low with its crispy and sleek flavor. This saw melody continues to groove along in the lower shelf of the mix, soon moving up in pitch as the music in the background swells for a build-up. The saw melody is genuinely beautiful, conjuring the image of a cybernetic sea creature gliding across the fluid instrumental. The following section strips the instrumental down, as we're left with a simple 4-on-the-floor groove, offbeat bass line, and a melodic piano performance. I love that Totto lets this section breathe throughout the rest of the song, because the piano melodies are a wonderful addition to the music. The piano moves in a jovial manner and brings a new ray of light to the sound, and eventually the section comes to an end and the song fades out afterwards. Track 9 is entitled The Wanderer. This song is another massive highlight for me, largely due to its strong composition and beautiful production choices. The song kicks off with an intro that is drenched in synthwave aesthetics. From the bright saw chords, the fat syncopated Moog-like bass line, to the bright brass-like synth counter melodies and blippy arpeggios, this is truly my cup of tea. The percussion is steady, and I enjoy the syncopated toms that make appearances throughout the section. A brief build-up follows, with risers and crunchy synths bleeding into the mix. The subsequent drop introduces several new sounds to the instrumental. The drums shift in a syncopated direction, as the kick adds a ton of bump to the track. A chunky synth joins the kick and highlights the syncopated groove for the drop. In the background, we can hear chopped samples and digitized effects. I love that the drop section features melodic elements as well, as we shift from the aggressive sound to something more soft. The melodic moments feature soft keyboard timbres, sleek saw melodies, and the background accompaniment grows brighter. The second part of the drop becomes more aggressive, which I do love. The chunky synth grooves grow angrier, it's spicy and laser-like with its attack. The sound bombards the mix, coming together with the bass line like peanut butter and jelly. The bass groove highlights 16th notes which beautifully fill the empty spaces within the mix, effectively raising the energy levels to a new high. The drums also act as an anchor for the section. I love the mind-bending tonality heard in the melodic moments of the second part of this drop. The chord progression moves in a jazzy manner, with the synth melodies flowing in a carefree way. And I mean that both in a tonal and rhythmic sense. Some of the rhythms we hear on this song are insane, stretching the limits of what EDM can sound and feel like. This tonality continues in the post-drop section as we hear a decrescendo in the mix. The drums move to the background as a carefree road melody enters the mix in the foreground. The background accompaniment includes bright synth chords and intergalactic samples, which sound like an old cartoon spaceship taking flight. As this section ends, we gradually return to the instrumentation from the intro. The following build-up feels more stripped down, and the drop slaps the listener in the face with a new groove. The mix is layered and complex as we shift between various tones and percussive elements at breakneck speeds. New elements include bright saw chords, break chord drum breaks, and variations in the synth grooves. My favorite element has to be the blippy arpeggiated melody heard in the mix. And this drop section is smoother and more melodic when compared to the first drop. I enjoy the fluidity displayed by the music here, it's beautiful. I love that the song evolves as it goes on. Totto is able to seamlessly transition through different color palettes in a cohesive manner. And the outro hints at a new tonality, as low piano rumbles help transition us into the following track. And track 10 is entitled Printing, featuring Zuni. The album's tone pivots in a new and interesting direction with this tune. The song has grown on me a lot. The tonality is unlike anything we've heard thus far as it moves into a harmonic minor direction. And the introduction of the vocal samples paint a vivid picture of a new scene. The mix is warm with distant swelling synths and percussive hits creating a beautiful atmosphere. I'm not sure of the language featured in the vocal sample, but I believe it may be Arabic. And I appreciate its inclusion as it helps flesh out the unique atmosphere presented by the instrumental. What follows after the intro is what I consider the first drop. The mix shifts featuring a steady breakbeat for the percussion, and in the background new instruments and sounds are introduced. The beautiful plucked melody sounds like an oud, a traditional Persian stringed instrument. We can also hear plucked synth bass lines and sustained glitchy tones in the background. I love the distant synth melodies heard during the following section. These melodies bridge the listener into the next section, which introduces a new strummed melody. I believe the instrument featured here may be a rubab or an oud, I'm not sure, but I do love how it sounds in the mix. It helps drive the instrumental and continues to enrich the colorful mix. And the music gradually builds as risers and drums steadily guide us into the next drop. This drop is a lot more lively, with new strummed melodies and stuttering tones repeating in the foreground. I love the percussive feel of this drop section, as the polyrhythmic approach to the mixing creates a gorgeous blend of grooves. The percussion shifts in energy, highlighting a halftime groove, with stuttering hi-hats and kick drums pumping the mix with energy. It's not a melodic drop, which is fine because all of our focus is on the groove of the tune, and that's got to be this section's strongest point. The song ends shortly after this drop comes to a close. And lastly, track 11 is entitled Exit New Reality. The album wraps up with one last dubstep-infused track. The song kicks off with a crispy syncopated saw tone. Upbeat dubstep percussion accompanies the sound, with tasty low bass rumbles sneaking underneath. The build-up section strips away the bass and introduces new synth timbres. They sound like flutes, and they work very nicely in the mix. The following drop section brings glitchy tones and fat basses back to the forefront. The groove here mirrors the saw groove heard in the intro, which brings the listener full circle. I can appreciate small details like that. I love the fluid nature of the synth tones. The color of the sound is constantly shifting. The transition out of the drop is interesting, as the drum groove shifts to a more upbeat sound reminiscent of Jersey Club. The glitchy synths continue, and the sub-bass feels more choppy to fit the mix more appropriately. The bridge that follows is beautiful as piano melodies enter the mix, and the drums calm down by a lot. It almost starts to feel like liquid dubstep, which is a gorgeous shift in tone. And after the bridge ends, we shift back to the sleek, syncopated sound from the intro. This swiftly transitions into the second drop, which is quite brief. This second drop is distinct because the synths highlight new melodies. I would have liked to hear more of this new groove, as the song ends after about 8 bars of the drop. Ambient synth flutters and tones close the song out, as the listener has finally entered another plane of existence. And overall, this was a strong album. Totto follows up his debut LP with his best foot forward. The result is an album that presents the listener with a diverse experience, displayed with a sleek filter that oozes Totto's distinct touch. I genuinely enjoy his sound because it feels like a blend of various production styles which he manages to bring together cohesively. Totto brings us plenty of bangers and makes sure to sprinkle in subdued cuts to fully flesh out the sonic atmosphere for the experience. Environment Music Volume 2 feels like a natural expansion for the sound exhibited in Volume 1, and I've got to say Totto managed to capture new hues of his style with this second album. I'm very excited to see what he goes on to make next. He's a young and promising talent with plenty of room to grow and expand. He offers a refreshing sound which isn't watered down by the wishes of a record label. And as a fellow music producer, I have to say I truly respect his dedication to his craft. I wish Totto the best of luck in his future endeavors. Just know I'm in your corner. And as I mentioned before, reviewing this album was truly an honor, and I hope you've enjoyed watching. And on that note, if you've sat here and you've listened to me talk about Totto and his latest album, Environment Music Volume 2, I genuinely appreciate you taking the time to do that. And if you are listening to new music, or you work on some kind of music, or you make some kind of art, and you really want to share that with somebody, you can always send that my way. If you'd like constructive criticism or feedback, just make sure to let me know, and I'd be more than happy to provide that to you. And with all that being said, I hope you've been having a very wonderful day. Make sure to stay hydrated out there and take care. Peace.